Q&A. Welcome to How to Prepare for the Reset, Adjusting to the Shift in Consumer Behavior. My name is Sandra Muir, and I'm the owner of Platypus Marketing and Communications, and I am joined here by Christine Tolton, the Chief Idea Officer with Red Cap Marketing. Red Cap Marketing is a boutique marketing agency that Christine founded in 2005 after a 20-plus year marketing and advertising career in both large international agencies and boutique firms. So hello, Christine.
Hello. Thank you for having me on, Sandra. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
It is.
I know, we've been talking about a lot of things, and I'm really excited to get to the details and the Q&A. But before we do, I just wanted to mention a couple of housekeeping notes. First housekeeping note, we love comments. There is an opportunity for you to comment in the top chat section. And just a heads up, you do have to be logged into Google to be able to comment. And you can also comment in the actual comment section of the video, but we won't be able to see that during the chat, only afterwards. So just a heads up about that. And then another just heads up in terms of transparency. This is the first time Christine and I have ever done this. So please be patient with us. There may or may not be barking dogs and some freezing, who knows? It's all live. So that's what makes it so exciting. But anyway, yeah, and anything you wanted to add, Christine, before we jump into the Q&A?
No, I'm excited to get started, and I'm excited to try something new. And I think that's kind of one of those, silver linings in the situation that we all find ourselves in now, because if this didn't happen, you and I would never have thought to do this.
No, this all just came out of a conversation of just, some different things we wanted to try.
Right.
We would never really have had time maybe to experiment and do some of these other fun projects. So that's actually a
creativity.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. So we started chatting about this a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, you mentioned that, a lot of great information and stats had come across your desk, particularly around consumer sentiment with COVID-19 and how it affects attitudes and behaviors. So just to kick things off, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you sift through what's relevant, what isn't, and conflicting information, that kind of thing.
Sure, that's a great question. So being in marketing and doing marketing strategy, we're always asking why. We always want to know why something happens, why a consumer makes a decision, how a consumer makes a decision. So I tend to read lots of things. I read pretty much everything I can get my hands on, some in more detail and some in other detail, that sort of thing. So I'm always generally just kind of scanning to see what's out there. However, when the situation really became, I guess, more prevalent, so kind of in that second, third week of March, all of a sudden we're just like inundated with all this information from a health standpoint on what's going on, information definitely in my world from a marketing standpoint, consumer attitudes, that sort of thing. So I was like, wow, reading everything I could find, trying to absorb it all, and very, very quickly realized that my anxiety levels were rising dramatically, as I'm sure a lot of people's were.
Mm-hmm.
And just trying to actually sort through it in my mind. What was relevant for me? What made a difference? What was entertainment versus fact? What was quote unquote false news? And then how do I sort through that? How do I kind of dig down and really figure out what's important? So I started to try to almost pull back a little bit in terms of what I looked at, and I really looked at the sources of information that I was looking through, and also what I found was really important is not to just read the headlines. And I know that sounds basic, but you read, kind of a little post on Twitter, and all of a sudden you think you have the whole story. But then when you dig into it, you realize that the headline was misleading or either intentionally or in your own mind because you put your own lens on it. So it's really just, how do you absorb that information? How do you think about it? What's relevant? as we kind of moved towards the end of March into April, I started to look at kind of trends and shifts in attitudes. So, how
Mhm.
are people feeling? How is it affecting my personal business? How is it affecting my client's business? What media are people consuming? That sort of thing. So, really, just tried to put a filter on what was going to be relevant for me and for my client base. So there's constantly new information coming up, and don't get me wrong, I can easily go down rabbit holes. I love to read stuff and I love to find out stuff, but I guess it's just taking a little bit of common sense, putting a filter on that, and
Mhm.
understanding there is conflicting information. So when that occurs, really looking at the sources and then just using my own best judgment.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so definitely all great points there for all of us, regardless of what's whether it's research we're looking at or news. Um, Wonderful. And I just noticed we do have a question from Isaac. So Isaac, fantastic question. I'm going to actually highlight this so that everyone can see. So maybe we'll just jump in and ask a question and then jump back and forth because I
Mhm.
think that'd be a lot of fun. So for both of you, what do you think one advantage of remote working could be? Sorry, cuts off to those within the digital communications field. So Christine, maybe you could address that first.
Sure. Well, I would say one advantage for anybody is so I'm going to be a little bit whimsical, but being able to wear what you want.
Yes.
um, and
Just make sure you wear pants, unlike that reporter. I don't know if you heard about that
yes,
reporter.
yes. So I say that kind of flippantly, but there is a little bit of truth to that. But just being able to be in your own environment, and I don't know if there's anything specific that I could think to the digital communications field. I would say from marketing overall, I think an advantage now is that it has forced us to be even more creative.
Hmm.
So within a marketing area, we tend to think of ourselves as creative people, even if we're more on the analytical side or on the traditional creative side. But it has forced us to even rethink how we go about doing things. So things that we thought we could never do before, we
Hmm.
could never produce a TV commercial remotely. We had to be on location. It had to take 3 months, that sort of thing. We are now able to do this, in a matter of 2 weeks, all from our own home without going on location. Is the quality is good? It's pretty gosh darn good. Maybe
Hmm.
not up to speed of what it was before. I think from a digital standpoint as well is that we're used to, I guess, working. Even if we were in an office, everything is digital. We're used to working remotely, even if we were on location. If that makes any sense.
Hmm.
So it allows us to be more flexible. It allows us to adapt and to respond quicker. I'm not sure about everybody else, but our advertising plans have changed about 17 times. Um, and that's just in a matter of one day. So I would say the responsiveness has been really, really good and the flexibility.
Okay, yeah. So from a social media perspective, I'll start there. That's sort of my specialty. I recently did a webinar about, how brands were reacting to the pandemic and messaging, and
Mhm,
particularly sort of um, in March into April. And one thing I will say is that I think this is going to be really positive for social media because it was never really there for us to talk about our products and services. I know we all want to talk about how amazing we are all the time and the great things we're doing, and we absolutely should. But I think for the first time, I've never seen such a large collaborative effort to build online community for the purposes of helping and assisting others, and even having brands step in to help educate, entertain, reach out to their audience. We often forget about that engagement side because we're like, oh, we have to have that post, we have to have that next
mhm.
Instagram grid post, or this is a great time for social media because it really is being utilized in such a great way. Are there people who are misusing it? Always, but in general, I'm really inspired by what I'm seeing other organizations do. There's a local store in Kitchener Waterloo here who has been very, very active on Instagram, continuing to sell on there, but also more than that, helping other retailers looking for ways that they can sell. So really elevating those other brands. So I think that there is definitely going to be a shift with social media. I'm hoping that that sticks. So that would be my answer. But yes, thank you for the question. Excellent question. Okay. So, jumping back to our questions for you, Christine. So, you talked a lot about research and things that you've been reading. So, based on what you're seeing, how are Canadians feeling now in this phase of the pandemic?
Well, maybe I'll start a little bit with some research that I've seen and then kind of switch over to a little bit more commentary. So, according to Nielsen, so when I talked earlier about sources of content, so I look at or research and stats, various different sources. Nielsen is one that I do tend to look at. We're in what Nielsen would call the restricted living phase of the consumer behavior threshold. So, it's severely restricted shopping trips. Online fulfillment is limited. There's price concerns because there's limited stock. And when there is stock, the price, we've all heard of the price gouging, and, retailers increasing prices, that sort of thing. Overall, it's just like kind of the restrictions on our life. That's kind of
Hmm.
where we're at right now for the most part of the country.
Right.
So the next phase to that will be what Nielsen calls the living a new normal, where people return to their kind of daily routines, but with a renewed cautiousness
Hmm.
about health. Um, Health has always been important to us, and as Canadians, we're very proud of our healthcare system and that sort of thing. But we've taken a little bit of a beating, and I think we're going to be a little bit more cautious about
Hmm.
just healthcare and health concerns in general. Um, I hope we're going to have some more gratitude and a little bit more recognition for things that we previously took for granted, like
Hmm.
going to the grocery store whenever we wanted, being
Hmm.
able to buy whatever we wanted. Like, who thought that the baking aisle would be one that would go, right?
I
There's
know.
nothing, you can't get flour if, that's kind of like the hot commodity. Or what about going to the gym or even going outside to go to the park? So I think those are kind of some of the things that we're recognizing now. We're recognizing that maybe we took for granted.
Yeah.
Um, I would say right now, for the most part, we're kind of what I would call cautious optimism. So we're starting to see a few things open up a little bit, and it's varying degrees of optimism. Like BC and Quebec are opening up a little bit quicker than perhaps other parts of the country are.
Yeah.
Um, so we're thinking, okay, I can kind of see what's going on, but I just want to be careful. I don't want to get too carried away. Um, we are seeing frustration for sure. So things like the fragility of our long-term health facilities, it's been painfully evident. I think that's been really heartbreaking for a lot of Canadians to think that our long-term health facilities maybe are being affected so dramatically,
Hmm.
and the frustration at not being able to visit people that you wanted to and that sort of thing. So I think it's kind of that. We're getting restless too. We're hearing of other countries that are opening up, even in the U.S. Whether or not we think it's right that they're opening early, we still, I think, maybe feel a little sense of envy, even if we think, well, they probably shouldn't be. But there's a little sense of envy. So I'd say overall, Sandra, it's like one day we're up, one day we're down, and it's kind of
Hmm.
so that's why I say kind of that cautious optimism, I think, is kind of like the two words I would use to sum up how we're feeling right now.
Yeah, and I would definitely say the up and down. I mean, most people that I talk to are feeling one day it's great, the next day not
Yes.
so much. Even for myself, I got very excited thinking, Ontario's going to unveil some huge reopening plan, but there was very few details. So then you think, oh, okay, this is still going. Um, but yeah, and I definitely think that longing, I think hopefully that helps businesses because I know every time I watch a show on Netflix and they're out at a restaurant, I look at my husband and I say, "Oh, I can't wait to go back to a restaurant." So I'm hoping that longing brings people to these online sources a bit more. That would be
Yes.
my hope, like that you're thinking, okay, I can't be in the restaurant, but you might increase the amount of times that you order. I know last week it went up for us. So hopefully we'll see a bit of a shift
Mhm.
there
For
from that
sure.
longing. Yeah. Okay, so based on the research that you're seeing, what types of media are people responding to?
Well, um, I guess there's what people are absorbing and there's what people are responding to. So, first of all, television is up dramatically, and that's actually, I would say viewing on all screens. So whether it's a traditional or
Hmm.
on your computer, however you do it. So more people obviously working from home and what they call, sheltering in place, or they're not working at all. Um,
Right.
Daytime television usage is up dramatically.
Hmm.
Um, so people who obviously, if we weren't at home before, we weren't watching daytime television,
Yeah.
even, and this is in all age groups too. So this is in the teen group. This is in everything right through to seniors. So while seniors may have been home before, a lot of seniors were out. They were doing things or whatever occurred in their lives. So now they're home and now they're watching television. So
Yeah.
daytime television usage is definitely up. Uh, and so I would say daytime, if daytime television or television usage is up, it's a lot of it is for entertainment purposes. Whereas I would look at radio. So radio is still, and it's so interesting, radio is still a reliable and trusted source of information. So if TV is for entertainment, radio is for my information.
Hmm.
Whereas before, kind of, morning and evening drive times were big. Obviously, we don't
Hmm.
have that as much anymore. The radio was on throughout the day now, for the most part. I'm kind of in that background doing whatever, and we're relying on radio a little bit more for information. Streaming video, massive, massive increases for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Netflix is very happy right now.
Netflix is very happy right now. So, and I would say, and I know this is more your wheelhouse, Sandra, but definitely all social media has increased dramatically. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, it's all like just, it's blown up. However,
Yeah.
what's interesting is that, and again, you can talk more to this likely, but the socials have had to get smarter. So as they've had trolls, cyberbullying, they've all come out in full force. We've really, really, it's been interesting from an advertising standpoint in terms of how we advertise on these different social channels. For example, Facebook now is actively, targeting false news surrounding, like false news stories around COVID-19.
Hmm.
So, I'm not even going to quote some of those false news stories, but they've really had to take a more active role and they've had to do it super, super quick.
Hmm.
Also, if you look at, so while this isn't really media, but what's interesting to look at is places like, or apps like Zoom, Teams, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, whatever your preferred app is. You take Zoom, for example. How quickly did they have to adapt to all of a sudden having a huge privacy and security issues? So
Yeah.
it's really interesting from that standpoint. Online videos,
Hmm.
YouTube, TikTok. TikTok is now like the new digital darling, and it's actually quite comical in a not in a mocking way, but in a genuinely funny way to see all these. TikTok used to be for the 16, 17-year olds, and now you have people like me who aren't quite that age anymore, doing TikTok videos with their kids. So it's been
Hmm.
really fun that we've kind of moved into this new world. I would say just overall, we're consuming more media and we're finding really kind of creative ways to do it with our friends, such as the Netflix party and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, yes, absolutely. I found the radio point that you made very interesting because I think a lot of people think, radio, what do we need radio for? But I would agree that it is helping, I think in particular locally to drive business. I was just talking to a friend yesterday who ended up ordering, I think she was ordering flowers, and the person asked, "Oh, where did you hear about us?" And she said the radio. And I found that really interesting because she's a millennial, we'll just say
Right.
it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so and then just to add to the social media piece, so I always do a recap of what happened in the month before my in my blogs,
Right.
and I just prepped the one that's going out on Sunday that reviews April. And the couple of things I would say: number one, I've never seen so many updates. Like social media is known for almost every time you log into a platform, it looks different somehow because they're constantly
Oh,
updating.
yeah.
But I've never had a period where there were so many significant updates, pulling like Instagram bringing DMs and live video onto desktop. You can log into TikTok on desktop now. Facebook launching messenger rooms, Google
Yes.
making Meet free.
Those
You
are,
know,
yeah, that's
there's so many
yeah.
crazy, like it took me forever to write. I actually had to break up this month's update because Instagram and Facebook had so many updates that I wrote some previous blogs first because I just couldn't hit everything.
Isn't that crazy?
It
It's
is. And
yeah,
then I've been following TikTok for about a year now, and they just Sensor Tower, which is a metrics analytics tool. Um, they always talk about, app downloads and things like that. So TikTok is just about to hit 2 billion um, downloads of its app. And Facebook is hoping to get to about 3 billion between across all of its properties. So TikTok is really, really on the rise, and definitely one worth watching, even though I know everyone listening is probably hating that thought. But you know what? I use it every day. It's very sticky. It's actually built to be sticky. So I'm not surprised that
it
it's
it is
growing.
fun. It is
Yeah.
fun for sure.
Yeah, it's very light, it's less polished. It's always got a lot of the stories have an element of surprise to them or emotion,
Right,
like all those great things we talk about, you need to
right.
have in a great marketing video, are inherently in there. And then I also realized that Drake had created his Tootsie Slide song specifically for TikTok, for
Yeah.
people to create TikToks, and his song did go number one on the Billboard. So, the Billboard chart. So, yeah, musicians are even realizing that they have this opportunity there as well. So, anyway, one to watch. But yes, absolutely, social media usage going through the roof as well. So and I find that interesting. Radio and social media. That's all
So
out there.
one additional point I would make is maybe around print. So I think if we have seen, and I wish I had pulled a little bit more stats on this. One thing that we have, I'm just thinking from a media placement standpoint, print has suffered.
Oh, it has.
In my own little world, I haven't pulled any stats from
Hmm.
that, so I can't say definitively. But just what
Right.
I've seen, I just know from a consideration standpoint, when we look at media overall, print has suffered a little bit. Um,
Okay.
Recently, I think it was earlier this week, we heard of a bunch of local newspapers that
Oh,
had
yes.
shut down.
That's
So
true.
yeah, I do wonder where that will see us go. From a magazine standpoint, it's been pretty tough because
Mm,
magazine has long lead times. So how do I know what message I want to put out?
right.
So even from a if even if there's no offer, so there's no sell to it, even a brand message, my brand message from 4 or 5 or 6 months ago may not be appropriate throughout the summer if I'm still
No.
doing a lot of shelter from home, if I'm still doing a lot of social distance. Does if I'm a restaurant or any sort of packaged goods, am I going to show people together?
Hmm.
Right? So how do I know what message or what imagery I want to use? So I think it's going to be pretty tough for a
Hmm.
while.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, even when I created the webinar that I did in, I think, early April, I
Right.
mentioned how, that I would have to recreate that whole webinar if I did that now because
Absolutely.
it wouldn't even apply at this
Right.
point.
Right.
So,
For sure.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point about print, and it is very sad to
Yeah.
see some of these local papers really taking a hit. And I know, in general, even some of the bigger papers, have had to lay off
Mhm.
journalists. So, um, yeah, it's a sad time for print for sure. But who knows what the future will hold. So switching gears a little bit, perhaps we could chat about how to manage the marketing message right now to make sure that you're not being tone deaf, but still getting the word out there. So, what are some of your thoughts around that?
Um, Hope. Is hope a strategy?
Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah, it's a really, really great question, and it's one that, as marketers, we're asking every day because we're having to adjust every day
Right.
as the world changes. But I would say there's kind of a few kind of guiding principles if you're looking at, first of all, if you when to start marketing again, if you haven't been, or even if you are marketing, what kind of message to put out there. So, what let's start at the beginning. So legally, I would say, when is it safe for your industry, depending on what industry you're in, to be
Mhm.
out marketing
Mhm.
or to be out promoting what your product does? So if your product entices people to go out and socially gather together, or if your product entices people to go out and take test drives of vehicles, or to go into tour a house, whatever it is, when is it legally safe for your industry based on national, provincial, regional, your industry regulations? I would say that's the very, very first thing you
Right.
have to take into consideration. Once you have that, look at consumer attitudes. Like, what do your consumers want? Are they in a buying mindset? And then for those who are ready and wanting to buy, we need to make it permissible for them to do so. We
Mhm.
can't make them, there should be no guilt in purchasing. If I need to purchase something, I need to purchase a new car, I need a new desk, I need whatever I need, allow me to do so, make it permissible for me to do so, while, respectively keeping the message, in a respectful manner, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. Because I think overall the message has to be considerate of the situation.
Mhm.
We're in this situation in our country and throughout the world. Like, when you think about it, everybody in the world is being affected by this in some way, shape, or form. Some of them
Mhm.
are further ahead than us, some of them are behind us, some of them have handled it differently, but everybody is being affected by this. And I
Mhm.
think there is some fatigue with hearing about, like, constantly hearing about COVID-19. How
Yeah.
many emails did you get in March that
Yeah.
started with, in this troubling time, during this situation? So, and that was, I'm not saying that wasn't the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do, but I think
Mhm.
we're kind of maybe getting to the stage where there might be a little bit of fatigue with that message.
Mhm.
But we consumers want to know that we recognize that the world is very, very different. There's definitely going to be a loyalty for brands who continue to respectively, respectfully
Respectfully. Yes.
respectfully market during this time. So consumers want to know how you're supporting your employees, what you're doing to keep them safe if they are continuing to work, if they have to be in that situation, and basically overall how you're supporting them. So they want to know that. They want to know that you have taken care of um, your your people, your situation, your brand, your in-house situation before you try to come out and talk to me. So that is really, really important. And
Mhm.
there's tons of research that has shown that brands who display that during this type of situation, um, they get the loyalty from people
Mhm.
after, when things start to kind of, settle down a bit, because people
Mhm.
remember that. Consumers have long, long, long memories, and they will kind of keep that in mind. I'd say overall, from a messaging standpoint, transparency is key. It's absolutely key. Do
Mhm.
not try to be somebody that you are not, and you have to stay true to your brand. So while I do think now is a time where you can take a few risks, you can do something that you haven't done before, you can be innovative, you can be creative. I do think you have to be true to yourself and you have to be true to your brand. Overall, though, and I don't think it can be said enough times, follow the lead of your consumers.
Mhm.
Whoever that is, whether you're in a B2B or a B2C situation, follow the lead of your consumers about whether they need your product, if they're in a mindset to want to purchase your product at this point, and then make it permissible for them to do so. Listen on your social channels, talk to your customers one on one if that's something that's feasible. Send out a survey if that makes sense for your brand and for your situation, but listen to what they're saying because they're telling you what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. All great points. I think to your first point about, just understanding what industry you're in, that also applies when you're thinking about social media posts because I had one client who's in the middle of a pretty major build of a new building. And this was around the time when the Ontario Premier said, yes, construction can keep going here. But construction workers were very upset because they felt they were putting themselves at risk. So this person wanted to post about it, but we all decided as a group that's not a great idea. Right. So
For
I'm
sure.
like taking the temperature of what is happening. It might be that it's great that your build is going on, but not so great for the workers.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. For
yeah.
sure.
And then the whole idea of being true to your brand, I mean, I've seen some brands really get it when they were all using that messaging like, we are here for you. I mean, if your customer doesn't feel that that is true, particularly on Twitter, they will tell you and they would tell you, this is how you can be true to me. And when you're not doing that, I'm not part of this brand loyalty. And they also do say things exactly as you have said. I've seen many tweets saying, I will remember this for good and for bad. Some people were
Yes.
saying, oh, I was so impressed with how this company handled this. I will remember this. And the opposite, the same is true for people who had a negative experience. So I really do see that mimicked quite a bit on social media as well. It is fascinating. And I think we're all, paying attention. And but it is interesting though. I agree about the fatigue as well because my bank called me this week just to check in and I just to see how we were doing. I'm like, yeah, like, you're really taking that we are here for you very far. I'll let you know if I need you.
Yeah, see, it's interesting. It's like just thinking of the bank example. Like, I want to know that they are trying to be supportive and all that, but I don't know if I wanna hear from you, but it's that interesting balance, but on the other hand, if they had not done anything, maybe, I
Yeah,
don't know, I
the
just
call seemed a little bit strange to me
yeah.
because um I hadn't reached out or
See, there's no playbook for something like this, right?
yeah.
So, if the pandemic had not hit and we had naturally went into a recession, there's a playbook for that. We
Mhm.
kind of know as marketers what we need to do during a recession. We know what's going to how the trends generally work and that sort of thing. So even though now we may be heading into a recession, it's with a whole different lens on it. So there's
Mhm.
no playbook for this, right? So it's interesting. Brands try
I
things.
Yeah, I agree. I do think though if I had received a call and they had provided something of value, so um because a phone call takes a lot of work, right?
It
Like
does.
that's more effort than a tweet or
Mhm.
something quick
True.
you could shoot off. So if they had perhaps, and I agree, there is no playbook, and it's so easy for me to say after the fact when I'm having time to think about it. But if I were to get that phone call again, I would love it if they were like, "Hey, you know what? I could send you like if you want, we've got like budget templates to get you through the
Mhm.
pandemic,
Right.
or we've got like something
Sure.
that I could use in my day-to-day life." And I
Sure.
would be like, "Oh, okay, thank you." Like I would probably remember that my bank was like thinking of
True.
something of value that they could add. So that's the only thing I would say. It's very nice. Like he was very nice and I don't, everything's fine, but and maybe they're doing it because they're worried about people and I do appreciate that, but I think just cuz it takes so much work to make a phone call, maybe
No, that's
having a little giveaway.
yep, valid point.
Yeah. So I see we have another question. I will pop it up. Thank you again, Isaac. So we can see current trends in quarantine marketing consumption, but what is one marketing shift that you think may continue after society opens up again? So, Christine?
Mhm. Great question.
Great question.
So, there's a few things. So, I think the conversation is moving from what it means to be an essential retailer to what it means to be a safe retailer. So,
Okay.
I think we're going to be there's going to be a lot more consciousness about that. Talking about safety is not sexy. It's not, a fun thing to do, to talk about how, we wipe down our doors and we wipe down our machines and, all of that sort of thing. But I do think that that is going to be something that people are going to talk about. There's going to be differences from, I think more people are going to be going online. As we start to come out of this, we've already seen in the US places like Best Buy, for example, is doing appointment only store visits, right? So if you want to go into Best Buy to shop, then you have to make an appointment to do so.
Hmm.
I think we're going to see recognition of, the new heroes. So not just the frontline workers, but, obviously all of the medical staff that goes without saying, but grocery store workers, bus drivers, etc. We're going to have a little bit of a different understanding. And I think that's going to continue. I don't think
Hmm.
we're going to let go of that when the pandemic, when we start to come out.
Yeah.
From a, I guess, marketing kind of tactic standpoint, mobile technology such as e-commerce is going to be so it already is being adopted at a much, much highly accelerated pace than it
Hmm.
was before. And for some companies, they may have thought, okay, well, this is in my 2, 3, 5 year plan. It has now become in my 1 year plan. So I think that's
Hmm.
going to be a big shift that we're going to see.
Yeah.
Um,
That
I
actually
think,
happened with a few of the social media, like Facebook launched some things, and
yes.
unfortunately, Reddit launched something that it went sideways. But some of them are rushing. But yeah, absolutely moving up the timeline for launches.
So that, yeah, that is the other thing. I think trying to be quick to market while being, I don't know,
Careful.
careful, I guess. Yeah, exactly. So I guess, yeah, careful to market. On that same vein, we're likely going to see an increase in augmented reality for brands, like both B2B and B2C brands, as they try to replicate an in-store experience online, or even an in-person excuse me, experience online. So,
Hmm.
for example, how does this outfit look on me? What's the augmented reality for that? How do I use this new piece of equipment that, an equipment manufacturer is building? Like, how does that? What's that augmented reality? How is that going to work? I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more of that creativity.
Can I mention one thing about that?
Sure.
So I was on TikTok this morning and I actually saw a video where this young woman was trying to decide what color she wanted to dye her hair. And in TikTok,
Oh
you
yeah,
could use a filter to
yeah,
change your hair color to
yeah,
test it out.
yeah.
So I feel like TikTok is really going to push these other companies because it's already investing in a lot of this type of technology.
I agree with you 100%. Another thing we'll see, I think, that will stick will be contactless payment options.
Hmm.
So we're already trying to promote those right now with everything that's going on, from a health and safety standpoint, but that's going to stick. That is not going away. I think the other shift we're going to see from a business standpoint is an increase in what we call resiliency planning. So, how do I cushion my business in case something like this happens again? Who ever thought that we would be basically closing everything,
I know.
closing stores, closing restaurants, closing schools, everybody work from home? So how do I, like, how do I plan for that? So the businesses that are fortunate enough to make it through all of this, how am I going to plan to make sure, what's my cushion going to be if something like
Hmm.
this happens again? Because now we know that this is a reality. This could happen.
Hmm.
Backups and safety plans, they're going to be, like, kind of the new sexy thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're really going to see that.
Yeah.
From a consumer attitude standpoint, definitely changes on physical distance, on health, on like health priority, on
Hmm.
privacy,
Hmm.
data privacy. So unfortunately, we have seen, the Zoom example that I talked about earlier, but even
Hmm.
from a data standpoint, what was interesting is that all of these emails that I received in March to say we're here for you, there was quite a few that maybe I signed up and I forgot, but there was also some,
Oh
predominantly
yeah.
from the
We
US.
each got those
Oh, yes.
two emails when we were chatting about planning this session, and we each got
and I did
Two from two different,
and
same
I did not
parent
sign
company.
that one. I know for a fact I did
Yeah.
not sign up for. So
Oh,
that's and as I have a very, very strong data background. So for me, that's very disappointing. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
mhm,
Um, Travel is definitely going to be affected. There's no
mhm.
question about it. How we travel. I actually read an interesting article this morning. I think it was in CBC or I can't remember where, about Air Canada talking about their when they thought the travel industry was going to come back, and they said, by Christmas we're going to be going throughout the world, and people were going to see a marked increase. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe. Like, I mean, I know that they need to be optimistic, but I think that's really going to be affected. So, Isaac, to answer your question, those are some of the things that are probably going to continue,
yeah.
either in a positive or negative way.
And I think too, looking to places where people are commenting will also give you an idea of consumer sentiment, because I did see that story shared on Twitter this morning, and the person sharing it said, uh, stay being in a confined area, all breathing the same
Oh,
air. I don't think so, is what that
even
person
if
said.
there's a
So
seat between us,
yeah,
right?
I think we're lucky in that as industry and organizations and not-for-profits, we can go and see what people are actually saying about these things. And it's not scientific, but it does give you a sense. And then buying patterns and things like that, we can look to as well. But absolutely. Um, yeah. Okay, great question.
It is. It's a really good question.
So, so we talked a little bit about the future of
Hmm.
business, but maybe we can just jump ahead to some fun silver linings that we can take away from all of this.
Ah, yes. So this is where I get to use my favorite quote. I love that Winston Churchill quote: "A good crisis should never go to waste." So
Right.
yes, it is, and I know everybody's been quoting it during this time period, but I think it's a good one for now. So silver linings, yeah, I would say, and again, wearing my marketing hat, definitely forced creativity. So I talked about, for example, how we produce TV commercials 3 months on location in South America. Now we're doing it from our home in 2 weeks because we have to. And we're figuring out how to do it, how to make that happen. So things that were never considered before, that we never would have thought, it was always, we can't do this, are now being brought to the forefront, and we're being forced to think about that. What do they say? Necessity is a mother of invention. And even from, if we look at things like concerts, for example, like look at the all these amazing artists from their homes who are doing these concerts. Like, I just think it's that forced creativity is absolutely amazing, and I just love to see it. Like, it just energizes me, whether or not it's something that I'm of interest, like I'm interested in. It just energizes me to see that. So we're all being pushed and forced out of our comfort zones, and to really think innovatively about how we can make our businesses work. There's a great uh, example here I want to share. So, a company that does their skincare company. So they have all these different skin products, and based on what your skin type is, then you get this type of skin product. They're now doing this all online. And
Mm,
in the past, they're like, we would never have even considered that because we need to be up close. We need to, kind of see and touch and feel. But now they have found a way to do it, and to do it quite effectively. I think that's amazing. And I love that we're being forced to do that.
hmm.
And then on the other hand, consequently, for consumers, what we as consumers would maybe previously have never accepted, like, I don't want an online skin consultation, I want to be there. It's now acceptable, and it's now okay. And
Hmm.
I'm kind of getting used to it, and I'm kind of liking the idea that I can do that, or at least that I have the option. So
Hmm.
I don't think face to face will ever go away for
No.
some people, but I do think it has now opened up options. So, and it has forced us to find these options and to figure out what our threshold is. So, I do believe that there is an advantage now to knowing that I can do this online, I can do this face to face, or whatever way works for me. So, I think that's I I love that. I love that. Um, I would say another thing is that consumers and businesses have learned how to communicate better. So there's obviously all the Zoom meetings and stuff like that, but I would also say, even consumers and brands, we've learned how to communicate better. Brands have been forced to listen to their consumers, whether through their socials or email or whatever. And we as consumers are now relying on the socials, the emails, the digitals, the television, whatever it is,
Hmm.
to learn more about our brand, to engage with them, to interact with them. So I think that's been really, really good. Um, Businesses, obviously have had to learn how to work remotely. So I think there's definitely a silver lining there. And another great thing is that the flexibility. So we
Hmm.
now have senior executives. These are massively important VIP people, working from their kitchen table with their toddler beside them and the dog barking. And it's like, it's an equalizer because
Hmm.
we're all kind of, not to, be a cliche, but we're all in this together. So we're all trying to figure out how to make this work. And that, president of the bank is now having to figure out how to do grade 3 math, right? How to teach, his child
Hmm.
how to homeschool while he's also talking to the chairman of the board. Like it's just, I think
Yeah.
it's, I think it's been really, really good from that standpoint. It's been
Hmm.
kind of that. I do think that is a silver lining, and I think there's an appreciation for that. And I think that whole work from home idea, businesses now know that is acceptable and that is okay in some cases. And we've heard already of businesses who have downsized physical locations, not people locations, but physical locations, because they've realized they don't necessarily need it and they would never have considered that before. So to me,
Hmm.
that is a big silver lining.
Yeah, no, all great points. I think just to add to that as well, on the social media side, one sort of grouping of updates that a lot of the platforms made in April were related to donations. So it's easier than ever to set up fundraisers for organizations. For businesses. So on Instagram, you can add a donate button to your business profile. TikTok has stickers, Snapchat has stickers where you can donate to the World Health Organization. I would say that's a silver lining as well, is
Mhm.
highlighting that ability to be able to share the wealth and to collaborate together. And I also think a lot of the updates that have come out recently are very helpful to individuals and businesses. So I
For
think
sure.
social media will just continue to evolve along in this new reality and be able to enhance what we're already able to do. And obviously, there are some winners in this, like a Zoom or Spotify, things like that. But I also think new innovative companies and apps will come out. Shopify just released a shop app. Hearing a lot of buzz about that. Um, Lots of great products to come. And I think that's also a great silver lining.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So just wrapping things up, it's been
Mhm.
about 15 minutes. So, any final thoughts about the way forward for organizations or businesses?
I would say transparency. Consumers want transparency. They've always wanted transparency, but I think they want transparency now more than ever. I think it's been, they want to understand who they're talking to, who their brand is, what's important to them. So being transparent. Um, Buying local wherever your local is
Yep.
has also become super, super important as everywhere around the world, small businesses are being forced to innovate. And unfortunately, even if they do innovate, sometimes it's not enough for them. So I think moving forward into, kind of whatever this new world is, buying local is going to be really, really important. And leverage technology, build that in where it makes sense for your business, build that in. Consumers want technology aided solutions to help them in their every, what they do every
Mhm.
day. And it can, from a business standpoint, it can help from your supply chain, monitoring inventory, whatever is relevant for you, but build that technology in and build it in from the beginning, and then you can just start building on it as your business grows or shifts or expands or whatever. um, and I guess last thing, as always, like, follow your consumers' cues. Give them what they want, and just, I know I keep kind of coming back to that, but it's good marketing principles during any time, but I think it's
Mhm.
even more important when there's a crisis. And let's face it, there is a crisis going on. We will get through this. There is another side to this.
Mhm.
But we have to listen to your consumers and talk to them. If you don't know, be honest. Say, hey guys, I'm not sure what you want to hear from me now. I'm not sure if you want to buy now. Like, talk to them and listen.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah,
All great points.
thanks.
Wonderful. Well, it's been wonderful chatting this morning. I hope whoever is watching, in particular, thank you to Isaac for all the great questions. Yeah, so this was really fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. And it'll live on the YouTube channel for a while, so feel free to share it. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Sandra, for having me. This was a great time. I enjoyed
Okay,
it.
great. Have a great day.